our next speaker will be Gary Guthart, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Intuitive Surgical, and he's going to be discussing with Ken Goldberg, one of my co-hosts and professor at UC Berkeley. So over to you, Ken.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Andrea. I have to say, I just want a quick mention that you have done a fantastic job with the series that you put together for COVID-19, and that we've seen a whole new side of your abilities as a moderator and a TV personality are really shining during this period. So thank you for that. And thank you, Robin. Robin, you mentioned we need to put on our engineering hat. I put on my COVID-19 hat, which is basically because I haven't had a haircut in 3 months at this point. I'm thrilled to be here with Gary, and he's one of my heroes in this field. He was absolutely the first person that came to mind when we started talking about this topic. And Gary, I want to thank you for your role in this field, your leadership in innovation, and in particular, I want to mention the DVRK program that Intuitive has started. The program has been tremendously valuable to researchers such as myself, Peter Abiel, Tom Lowe. This was something that you and Simon DeMaio started, and it has been incredibly helpful to have the research platform of the Da Vinci Classic in our labs and to allow us to be able to do experiments with them. I also want to give a shout out to Johns Hopkins and other groups that have worked on this. And I just wanted to start by asking that you, from your perspective, how things have changed. I mean, there has been so much disruption in the last few months, and you have 2 kids now at home. You're working from home. How has your world changed in terms of COVID-19?
Thank you for inviting me in. It's a pleasure to join you this morning. And we're delighted to be a part of the research community. I started at Cal. I spent some time with Tom and others at SRI. So this is a fantastic community to be a part of. Let me just start there. Some things have not changed with COVID, and some things have become more intense. I think I'd start with a couple. One is, I think it's an honor and kind of a sacred obligation to be in the healthcare industry at this time. It is disruptive. On the other hand, we all of us on this call get a chance to do something to help rather than wait. And I think that has been really interesting. And the beginning parts are help where we can. Simple things. We've redesigned and relaid out our factories. We're considered an essential business, and so we keep going. And you start thinking about where's the leading edge of virology? What can we do to help keep our employees safe? How do we make sure we can supply the hospitals? Our team has volunteered in a million different ways, helping people design and implement updates to ventilators to make them easier to produce. We've converted manufacturing lines to create personal protective equipment for hospital staff. So while it's an intense emergency, many of the people in this space can help on the front lines, not always in the research setting to start, but in the kind of solve the problems that you can solve place. We are working from home. We have my oldest is in grad school. She's 25. My youngest is a senior in Los Angeles in college, just graduating. It's disruptive for them. On the other hand, I think they're really resilient. And I am not concerned that we won't have opportunity for all of the people on this call to make a serious contribution. I think there will be investment on the part of governments, on the part of venture capitalists, on the part of organizations to do better going forward. And I am thankful for all the people on this call and for the work that we will all do together. They need us. I don't think we'll be idled.
Thank you, Gary. That's really valuable to hear, because I think there's many students who are feeling a lot of pressure, disruption right now, and concern about the future. And I know this is also true from the faculty perspective. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. Let's step back now. When we talked last week, you told me about a really interesting statistics about when in hospitalization and their implications for autonomous or robot-assisted surgery. And also, I want to mention, I hope you'll touch on this analogy that we discussed about driver assist and surgeon assist. So can you tell us that story?
Let me hit a couple of things. I'm going to try to share my screen briefly here. Let's see if it works. Okay, went through good. So just I want to ground everybody here in the data. There are better researchers on this call by me by a long shot. And perhaps what I can add to this conversation is a little bit of what's happening out in the world in plain language. So I'm going to show you 2 slides about what the standard of care is like in the United States. And the first one here is 5-year survival rates for cancer. And you see the different kinds of cancer in the body. And, I didn't know this until you go ask. You got to go look. And so for esophageal cancer, something that our Da Vinci product just got a clearance for, the 5-year survival rate is 21%. For lung cancer, bronchial cancers, one of the products we have, and one of your other panelists also has one in this space, the 5-year survival rate is 20%, 1 in 5. In other cancers, prostate cancer and thyroid cancer, the survival rates are quite good. So there's this massive, the earlier speakers, Andra and her guest, clearly we're talking about unmet need. Well, let's start with that unmet need. The situation's even worse. So here's the cold water brigade. This is why we all go to work. If you say, well, take a particular cancer, in this case, rectal cancer, so deep in the pelvis, and you ask, what's the complication rate for a surgery done in the rectum? Complication rate just means it didn't go as planned, that some additional interaction was required. This is all-comer data in the United States. So it's all patients seeing all surgeons. By the way, it's the same in Japan, it's the same in India, it's the same in the UK. All-comer complication rate's 36%. More than 1 in 3. If you were in industrial robotics, this would make you crazy. More than 1 in 3 patients don't have a direct course. And frankly, about 1 in 10 patients will have a durable complication that will never heal. About 1 in 10 will not recover fully from that surgery. That is the standard of care today. And frankly speaking, it's not very good. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. And go a little further, ask how much variability is there? So if I'm a person and I go see a care team, a surgeon, anesthesiologist, and they're in the lowest quartile of skill, how likely am I to get a complication or be readmitted, have to go back to the hospital relative to the top quartile of skill? And it turns out if you are unlucky and you see somebody in the lowest quartile, they're 3 times as likely to create a complication and twice as likely to have you come back. So you talk about human in the loop. It's a massive variation. By the way, I've talked about this data. This isn't intuitive data. This is data out in the world. I talk about it with surgeons and hospital administrators all the time. It's not really a big debate. This is pretty well known. And so for those of you on the call, you're trying to solve a problem that says, this is insane. An industrial process that produces 36% of the time a not great outcome and has massive variability. So one more stat I want to get to, and then Ken, I'm sorry, I'm kind of filibustering and I'll come back.
No, it's great, go on.
One more stat I'd ask you to think about, because we're going to talk about automation in a minute. I want you to think, folks on the phone, how many human beings have to do the right thing the day of surgery? So from the time, I had a surgical procedure, from the times I'm dropped off in the morning to the time I'm taken back home and get to my house, how many human beings do you think have to do the right thing to make that happen? And there's some research on this, and we've done some studies. Think about workflow. And the answer here, again, it's not a huge debate, is between 60 and 70 people have to do the right thing the day of surgery. So we think about the anesthesiologist or the scrub nurse or the circ nurse or the surgeon or the assistant, but there's a huge number more from check-in to leave. And so if the problem we're trying to solve is better outcomes, and you want to get that workflow right, it's a hugely complex problem. This is much, much more like a commercial airline, as an analogy, than it is like a self-driving car, because of the total number of interactions that are required. So let me kick it back to you, Ken, and then we can go whichever direction you like.
Okay, great. Well, there's so many great directions there. I mean, what you're saying about the analogy with commercial airline is that when you check in for a flight, you have to go through, there's a check-in agent, there's a refueling, there's the pilots, there's the food preparation, all those aspects. So you're saying there's a huge body of individuals that are behind every single passenger. And you're saying this analogous thing is true in surgery. We think of the surgeon in the OR, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg. So where would be some open problems there, just on that one first, where you see there's opportunities for researchers in helping to ameliorate that, especially in light of the COVID-19 situation?
So you can, very beginning is, for those of you who are interested in healthcare data science, a huge opportunity just to do the mapping, just to come in and say, do we have good data that helps us understand both who's doing the work and where the errors occur? So there's a huge opportunity there in kind of the data science side. The next one is you can start, it's really straightforward to me, is look at the funnel and start saying, and this is what we do. Ask yourself, what are the sources of bad outcomes? What are the sources of complications? Where do they come from? Sometimes they're a failure to understand what a surgeon's looking at, imaging, and I'm going to show you something in a video in a minute. Sometimes they're a failure to understand what the next step is, a missed handoff in an interaction. And so there you can think about technologies that are kind of self-sensing, understand the workflow and help transition workflow better. Sometimes those are physical things, sometimes they're computing things that you can imagine. I think that's pretty cool. The other thing that, especially in the era of COVID, that I would ask you to think about is the opportunities for telemedicine. You heard it in the earlier talk, but also mixed reality are massively important. So the idea that you can enable somebody in the room with intelligence from outside the room, especially when you're trying to preserve or conserve personal protective equipment. You want as few people in the operating room as necessary. You want the absolute minimum, because everyone in there has got to be gowned up. Everybody in there has to worry about infectious disease in this era. So if you can project capability into somebody who's already there, make a generalist an expert, you have a huge opportunity. And I think we're just scratching the surface of what that capability can be.
So this is interesting because the whole idea of telesurgery was one of the original motivations behind the development of surgical assistant, robot-assisted surgery. And I'm curious about that. Is that coming back now? Do you see new potential? Because this is something that Tom and I have been working on. I know a number of groups are looking at. Obviously, there's time delay differences if you go more than a few feet away. But now with the need to really minimize the number of people in the OR, is there more research being done on telesurgery or opportunities? I'd have you think about it kind of in a structured way. And so start with telementoring or teleproctoring. I think so the idea in that one is, you're not trying to remove the primary surgeon from the patient at a great distance. What you're doing instead is saying, hey, the world's expert in this condition, let's say, lives in Tokyo, and you're trying to do a surgery in Los Angeles. Can that world's expert tap in, see things, and help, either directly through just intelligence or through manipulation? I think there's a very good set of use cases for that. And I think that technology is coming. In part, Intuitive starting to bring it, and part some of the other panelists who are on this call will likewise pursue those kinds of things. I think there's a good reason for that. When you start thinking about the next one, separate the primary surgeon by miles from the patient so that you don't have a surgeon in the room. This is more the space flight, NASA kind of projection. The use cases become smaller, and I think there the risk level goes way up because you worry about stability of the link and other kinds of things, and your kind of a risk analysis changes. I think that may be of interest in very particular places, probably not a dominant use case from my perspective. Okay, good. Let me come back to the point you made earlier about the huge variability between individual surgeons and the outcomes the complication rates. So if you're in the lowest quartile, you said there's 3 times as much complications.
Yeah.
And do these surgeons know that they're in the lowest quartile? Are they aware of that?
That's a fantastic question, and I'd ask you all to think about how many folks will self-identify on the call as a bad driver. Almost none. You know, it's interesting. I've had a chance to ask this question of about 30 chiefs of surgery from all the large academic hospitals in the United States. And the question is, do the lower performing surgeons know who they are? And there wasn't a single dissenter in the audience. The answer was no, they do not. And it's interesting, they don't have ready access to data. The creation of electronic health records is starting to give them that access. There's also a fair amount of rationalization that goes on. So it's a massive opportunity. And for those of us in the field, we can now be quite data-driven. Robots are fantastic sensing devices. Add to that machine vision, robotics, networked and cloud computing, and you can now start assembling very large data sets that start giving surgeons feedback in skills ways. And by the way, if you get metadata and hook it up to the electronic health record, you get more than just real-time feedback. You also get outcomes feedback. And I believe in the next 4 or 5 years, this issue of the lower performers not knowing who they are will absolutely be turned on their head. And it is communities like this that'll do it.
So this is really interesting because one of the aspects is that, as you mentioned, there's a huge amount of data that's generated during a surgery, aside from the video, but the trajectories of the robot end effectors. And in some sense, it's almost very, very difficult to analyze the terabytes of data that come in. So do you see a role for new techniques for segmentation, for example, or an analysis of the video and trajectories?
Absolutely. The data cleaning problem may not be viewed as a great research challenge. I think it is a fantastic research challenge. First of all, a lot of the metadata, who is the patient, what's going on with them, what preconditions did they have, what course did they actually have. First, there's the whole issue of how's that data captured in what databases? And a lot of those databases were built for billing purposes, not for clinical purposes, so that they actually get coded in ways that are not as clinically relevant as you might think. Second thing is you have to go through all the HIPAA requirements and privacy. So actually data handling is extremely sensitive. Then you want to combine it with all the real-time data you have from the room, and that's a data and synchronization problem. And so if you say, I think machine learning and AI is an incredibly important opportunity, which I agree it is, one of the massive challenges is getting data that you can trust and not identifying trends out of noise. We're working hard on it, and others are as well. I think it's a great opportunity for folks.
Great. Okay, so I know there's some questions coming in because we have 300 people online at the moment. So, but before we do that, I want to ask you about something that I'm particularly interested in, which is in starting to have some very limited autonomy in the OR. And so we made the analogy with self-driving, and this would be the similar as like blind spot detection or tracking, for example, automated parking assistance. Not replacing the driver altogether, but just assisting the surgeon. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Fantastic. Let me tell you where we are, what's actually commercially available out in the world. So let's talk about layers. Let's call that first one, you said blind spot assist. I agree with that. Think of that as aids. We can help a surgeon with situational awareness. Today, in today's Da Vinci systems, the ones we have in the market, that exists. If you look at my hand on the screen, and the surgeon's working and they get distracted, their hands goes off screen, just like blind spot warning, we can flag them. Hey, you lost your hand. Your hand is no longer in the screen. Don't do anything, bring it back. That exists today. So that's that first level. The next level on top is, think of it as decision support. The robot isn't grabbing anything, but it's starting to look at what's happening. Think of this as forward collision warning in your car. It's now looking out for you and saying, hey, pay attention. We have that as well, and I'm going to show you in a minute a video. The next one on top of it is autonomous subtasks. So I'm not ready to take the whole surgery over, but maybe there's a part that makes a lot of sense where the robot can do it really well, high precision, quickly apply some sensing. That exists today in the market already. And then the next one on top, perhaps, the top of the pyramid, is large segments fully automated. And that may happen in the future. There's some neat opportunities for that, but it's pretty complex. And what I tell you is that surgery is automated driving in a snowstorm with no lane markers. It's tricky. There's a lot of complexity in it. So anyway, think of that pyramid. If I may, I'm going to use a video. This video has some surgical scenes in it and live tissue. So this
right. We want to give trigger warning. Good, thank you.
Yep. If you do not want to see this, now's a good time to go get your coffee and step away. It will just be about 4 minutes. And that's up. You can see it?
Yes.
Yes.
So you're looking here at a section of bowel. You're going to see a couple of things. First, one of the reasons that people get complications is it's hard to see. This has a near-infrared contrast agent in it and a set of lenses and filters on the endoscope to help you see in infrared domain. And that will show you where blood flow is. It's hard to see where the blood is flowing in this. Then you're going to see a surgical stapler come in. The surgical stapler is a large instrument that has a lot of fine, looks like paper staples in it in rows. And that will fire to create a seal on this tube. The tube is the colon, and a seal on that tube. The firing of that stapler is actually fully automated and sensed. It looks in, it looks at how much tissue is between the jaws, and when the surgeon says, I'm ready, it fires, and it goes back and forth. It is actually a shared control algorithm with supervisory control by the surgeon. It feels entirely mechanical to the surgeon, but it's actually being run and controlled by the robot. So let me kick this off, and hopefully it runs through. So this is moving into the infrared. Where you see the green, there's blood flow. Where you see it dark, the blood is not flowing. That's because the surgeon has cut off the blood supply. That gray part is the part the surgeon wants to take out. That's got the tumor in it. That's the stapler coming in. And that firing you see, that little bar, is actually being done entirely by the robot under feedback-based control. So here's the stapler. It goes in. It's going to seal that tube. So this is this shared control, this autonomous back and forth. Sometimes people think about it as, hey, we can do automated suturing. Maybe that's true. So that's an interesting opportunity, or automated navigation. So those are some things that are possible in the future. But some of this is happening now. The interaction design and human factors work that has to be done for this is really intense and really powerful. So for those of you who like interaction design and human factors engineering, we have a job for you. It's fantastic. Can I show you one mixed reality thing while I have video up? Is that all right?
Sure.
So next one, we were talking about MR, and you think about applications of MR if you want to be at a distance. This next video is a navigation robot into the lungs. On the top of the screen, you see up here, you're seeing a CT scan, segmented CT scan of somebody's lungs. This little dot at the end is a tumor. They want to explore that tumor. This is a registered 3D model of that CT scan oriented to what the catheter is going through the mouth and into the bronchial tree. This is the actual view from the endoscope. So a flexible endoscope. So this is now a flexible endoscopy application using navigation. And if we play, you can see the surgeon navigate themselves down the bronchial tree. The model on the left, the actual on the right, and all of this is navigating to get to a nodule that's a suspected tumor deep in the lung. And so fully mixed reality, really, really cool. This product has been in the market on our side for 6-9 months. Other panelist on the call also has a like product's been on the market a little longer, but the idea here is the same thing. How do we navigate tortuous pathways in the body to help surgeons or interventionalists find something of interest and deliver a therapy without having to make cuts. Anyway, I'll kick it back.
Okay.
Back to you.
No, great. Thank you, Gary. And for everybody's benefit, there's no more gory videos, so you can come back to this. You can open your eyes now.
Thank you.
So these are great examples, and I'm actually curious about there's the new sensing modalities, right? Using light in different wavelengths, and to what degree do you see the role? This is one of the questions that came in. What degree do you see the role of AI and deep learning changing the opportunities?
Fantastic. So the machine vision opportunities are massive. You look around and say, what do surgeons want to know to avoid a complication or to make sure that they take out what they want to take out? So, surgery, kind of a simple model. Don't touch the things you want to remain healthy and take out the things that are a source of disease. So can you find disease boundaries? Can you find nerves? Can you identify a tissue type? If you can do that using machine vision techniques and neural networks and other fantastic, you can absolutely combine them with things like contrast agents or mixed modality, CT scan or MR. You can start combining these to get you better outcomes. And I think it's a really hot area of research. Makes a ton of sense. A large fraction of complications come from misidentification of what's happening inside the body. And so think of this as the LiDAR for self-driving cars. This is the version for surgery.
Well, it's interesting because one thing we've been experimenting with is using the new generation of depth sensors. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not necessarily practical inside the body yet, but it's interesting because to try and close the loop around the control has been a big challenge. Even if you can see things well, getting the instruments to the coordinated locations with the right forces and torques, this is a challenge. And I'm curious about issues like calibration and things like that, which don't come up. Those are done by humans, surgeons, intuitively. But that if we're going to have a robot assist with such things, it opens up this whole door to how do we calibrate and coordinate the motion.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if that's an area of interest as well.
Absolutely, it absolutely is. So the idea of using, one of the cool things about these robots, of course, you have imaging sensors. Sometimes you have optical sensors, and then you have all the things like encoders and other things in the arms themselves. Mm-hmm. You can do the same thing. You can use these clouds of data to do some of the registration. First of the robot itself, how do you know its own kinematic chain with high precision, and then the environment. Simon DeMaio, who you know well, he's the right person to ask. He was all over it. You can flood his inbox.
Okay, I look forward to doing that. All right. Well, listen, again, I want to thank you so much because you've set the standard for this field, and we've been so impressed by all the research that you're doing, the way you're supporting research in universities around the world. Taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today is another example. And there's a number of, and I think your inspirational comments at the beginning were so fantastic. Do you have any last words of advice for students, grad students?
Well, first, it's a pleasure and an honor to count myself amongst this community. My comment for everybody on the call is I think we need you. The world needs you. And I'll tell you that the companies in our space, including us, are hiring through this period of COVID. Not. This is a big deal for us. So there will be a time when COVID is not the #1 news story. That day will come. They will need all of us through COVID, and they will need all of us afterwards. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gary. Terrific. You're fantastic.